Great. Yep, live stream was just started. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started on the next slide. We will start with our usual introduction. So in the chat, include your name, your agency, your title, your role, anything else that would be helpful for the group to know about you or anything you want us to know about. As Linda shared in her email communication, we don't anticipate that this is going to take the entire time. We have just a few items to discuss. So before we jump in, just go ahead and introduce yourselves. Hi, everybody. I see you're putting it in the chat. Great. Okay, let's go on to the next slide then while folks are introducing themselves. And we will just remind everyone about our virtual meeting protocols. Y'all are fast with the chat. Great. Great, great, great. Nice to see everybody.
You don't have to close.
Hello, hello. Okay, well, let's go ahead and go to the next slide, please. Great. So just a reminder of our virtual meeting protocols. Go ahead and mute yourself unless you're speaking. And then, of course, always unmute yourself if you have something you would like to say. If you've got your camera on, that'd be great. If you can't have it on right now, we totally understand. Please use the chat box. We have lots of people keeping an eye on the chat box. As usual, if we have any technical challenges, thanks for your patience. And then if you need to leave early, just send Tamara a message in the chat. Okay, next slide. There we go. So here's what we're hoping to accomplish today. The first, we're going to review and approve our May meeting notes. Then Linda and her team are going to give us an update on the 2026-27 budget, as well as the teacher support payments. As you will recall in our May meeting, we decided to reconsider and vote on the minimum pay rate for IAs for the upcoming school year at this meeting, using the information from the budget to help guide that conversation. And then we will receive some program updates. So not a very full meeting today, but some important items to address. So Linda, do we have quorum?
We're one person short.
One person short. Okay. So we will save the meeting notes review and vote until we get quorum. So why don't we go ahead and just jump to the next slide. And Linda, I'll turn it over to you to talk all about the budget.
Okay, so we said we would come back and update you, and it was a mixed year. Good news and disappointing news, of course. We did receive an increase, which is obviously we're thrilled to get an increase in this environment. Many programs were cut. Many initiatives didn't receive the resources that they were hoping for. You'll recall that we did go ahead and request money to grow because we didn't want, even though we knew it was a grim budget environment, we didn't want to imply that we weren't in a position to grow or that we didn't desire to grow. So we did ask for some additional funds. Those were, not surprisingly, those were not received, but we did get an increase of 1.27 million in new funding for Durham PreK. But what that does mean, it wasn't really, it was new local funding, which is fantastic, but it did not reach the amount to cover how much we had previously in our budget in temporary funding. So we actually ended up with a gap, and therefore we did have to cut seats as we shared with you at our last meeting. Next slide. So just to recap, you've seen this slide before. Last fiscal year, we did receive additional dollars, $770,000 in ARPA funding that we were able to use to supplement some needs. And in addition, Durham Public Schools had received ARPA funding for the specific support of children with high needs, which allowed them to operate at the newer school, Murray Massenburg. There are 3 classrooms at Murray Massenburg that serve children in Durham PreK. But in the direct Durham PreK budget, we did receive additional dollars in 25-26, which meant that last year we did not have to cut any seats. We were able to implement the base support payment, which helped defer the cost of salaries. And we did last year slightly increase the teacher support payment due to inflation. And we were able to preserve our RAP care before and after school scholarships. And we had a very, very modest bonus for instructional staff for completing professional development goals. But we did not increase our reimbursement rates last school year. You had voted to increase them, but we did not implement the increase due to the overall budget last year. Next slide. So in order, again, you've seen this slide before. We did request 2.57 million increase in Durham PreK funds, which was a combination of backfilling not part-time, the temporary money, as well as some modest increase in funding for expansion. And that was, what we asked for. We also estimated how much the increase in RAP care costs was going to be. The state of North Carolina sets the subsidy rates based on the federal money available, as well as what the legislature deems to be adequate. And we estimated that there would be an increase in the RAP care rates. There was an increase passed in subsidy rates. We're still working through those numbers to see what the impact will be on our RAP care. But we also requested money to maintain the Murray Massenburg seats because Durham Public Schools was going to also be losing those temporary dollars. We also made an estimate of what we thought the impact on payments would be for the teacher raises. It was not accurate. It was an estimate based on early information. The legislature did pass a teacher raise that was substantially different, which we shared with you in May. And we've made adjustments, which we'll talk about at this meeting today. But for sure, we were not able to expand seats because the 650,000 we requested was not able to be allocated. Next slide. So where we are right now for the fiscal year 2027. The final funding approved for Durham PreK was 1.27 million addition to our base funds, which brought the money to $8,643,029. The increase was not enough to maintain our current seats, and as a result, we have cut seats. And we're going to talk more about that in just a minute. So we did decide with your guidance to implement the increase in reimbursement rates that you passed from the previous budget year. So we are moving because of inflation and the fact that we have not increased rates since the 24-25 school year. We are increasing the reimbursement rate to $15.14 per child per month. So we're implementing your previously approved increase. Those funds, we knew we were going to have to cut seats, and so we worked hard to try to cut them in strategic ways. Next slide. So what does this mean? So the estimate, you'll see that little asterisk there doesn't look like much. And why is that? So we cut um 34 Durham pre-K only seats. You'll recall that a Durham pre-K only seat is a seat that is 100% paid for from local dollars. We also cut 23 enhanced seats at NC pre-K sites. That total basically was then divided by the estimated number of 4-year-olds in the census in 2027. There's 4,061 estimated 4-year-olds in 2027, and that adjusted our where we are in our community goal to 41%. The reality is that the seats that are totally locally funded, those are gone. Obviously, when you cut 100% of funding, the seat disappears. For some of our braided funding model, the enhanced seats, we are hopeful that some seats that are no longer being enhanced, some seats will still exist. But those things are still being worked through, and we will report back to you more fully at our first meeting of the school year in September in regards to that. But the tentative update, just wanted to let you know that cuts did come from the new budget. So before we kind of move on, I don't know, are there questions in the chat or any questions we should adjust before we move forward?
There's one question in the chat from Christina. In real terms, do we think fewer kids will be placed since we had seats still open at the end of the school year? I'm curious what the actual seats but impact might be with reduced funding.
Yeah, it's hard to say. Right now, we did try to be very strategic about the way we cut seats. We looked at demand, we looked at all factors as we tried to identify seats to cut. It's a balance. And typically, I was having this conversation this morning in a different meeting. In our community, many families wait and they don't really wake up to the fact that school is starting until August. And so when you look at the trend line, we have a lot of families that approach us about services late and have not applied yet or are really not as responsive around their child's preschool placement as they will be as school gets closer and closer. So the reality is that we will know better as we get closer to the start of school and obviously once we open. There is it's just very hard. So I can't really answer your question and I don't really want to speculate, but we did try to be very cautious where we made cuts and we tried to balance the supply of seats with the demand for seats because some sites are less in demand than others from families. And so we definitely were trying to be strategic in our reductions.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Joy to talk in more depth about our current situation with seats and funding.
Thanks, Linda. So the previous slide was all publicly available pre-K seats, not just Durham pre-K. That's where that percentage was coming from. This chart is looking just at the seats that receive the local funding, both the Durham pre-K only seats as well as the enhanced seats. And so that just shows the change in seats over time since the very beginning of the program. And you can see this is our first decrease since the COVID year when there were reduced capacity issues because of COVID. And it is the biggest decrease with a 15% decrease in the number of locally funded seats. Last year, we had 676. This year, we're at 577. That could still change slightly, but it is not, as we finalize a few things, but is not expected to change greatly. However, so that's 99 seats. About a third of those, like Linda said, 34 are DPK only seats. So those are seats that definitely will not exist because their only funding source was Durham pre-K. But at least 42 of those we believe will still continue to have children in them. They will still exist because they are enhanced seats that have another funding source at its base, and Durham pre-K was coming on over top of that and enhancing it. So we do believe those will still continue. So it's not a 15% overall decrease in seats, obviously, based on what Linda just showed you. That's just the locally funded seats that are receiving money from our program. If you go to the next slide, we wanted to share with you about the rates and why we are implementing the rate you voted on last year of 1514, even though that we are having to cut seats. Of course, that is unfortunate. It's not, we don't like having to cut seats, but we still believe it is vital to continue to implement this rate increase so that Durham pre-K can remain a program that's financially beneficial for sites to participate in. And this chart kind of explains that. So currently, today, the subsidy rate for 4-year-olds in 5-star care in Durham County is $12.73. That's that green bar on the chart. And so that means providers can receive $1,273 for children receiving a DSS voucher for regular care with no additional quality education or pay requirements outside of what's required by regular licensing. The recently approved state budget will increase that rate, which Linda alluded to earlier, to $14.52 per month. That's that orange bar next to the green one, starting in October. That puts the regular subsidy rate just about even with our current DPK rate, which is $14.56. So even though, we do, the Durham pre-K day is only 6.5 hours, but we do have a lot of higher standards, including teacher pay, professional development, other increased quality standards that cost more. So keeping our rate at $14.56 would just make it hard for providers to justify participation in the program if they can receive virtually the same amount by just accepting regular subsidy. So the blue bar is the NC pre-K rate, which has seen a small increase from last year from 1,100 to 1,129. The purple is the median private tuition rate, which right now is 1385. That is as of March. That's the most recent data that we could get, but it is that also approaching that 1456 rate. So the increase to 1514 is a 4% increase over our current rate. That was what it was approved last year. And we feel like that will keep us well above the current median private tuition rate and somewhat above the new updated subsidy rate for 26-27. And so we do feel like it is still crucial to implement this rate increase, even though we are having to cut seats because it just makes the program more sustainable for the future. Any questions? I see there's some things in the chat.
Yeah, there are a couple questions. One thing I just want to mention, we do have a quorum now. I put that in the chat, but just in case you missed it. So once we get to our voting items, we will pursue them. Kathy asked about the NC pre-K rate. This is the new NC pre-K rate that is listed in this chart. Who knows when the NC pre-K rate will adjust to the market value? We don't know that. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if anybody knows the answer to that. Ileana asked about how many families qualify for child care subsidy, how long the current wait list is, and in answer to your question about whether families, whether there are enough families receiving subsidy in Durham that providers would just take subsidy children. Um, some providers don't take subsidy. They choose not, some private providers choose not to accept subsidy because there's a gap between the private pay rate and the subsidy reimbursement rate. As you can see from the median private tuition being $13.85, there are, half of those private sites charge more than $13.85 and approach the new subsidy rate of $14.52. Um, in terms of the waiting list and all that, we could have a whole meeting to talk about subsidy in Durham, but I will say that Durham underspent their subsidy dollars this year. There's a lot of reasons for that, very complex reasons. Probably best answered by DSS, but I will say that that is a recurring trend in Durham. Every year they underspend their subsidy dollars for a variety of reasons. This year, more so than typical because they got a very late. The state created a huge barrier in the subsidy program this year by giving an allocation late in the school year to counties, which made it very challenging for counties to get those dollars spent before the end of the fiscal year. So the numbers are really off. And some private providers do feel strained and challenged by the Durham pre-K requirements. We are constantly working with them to provide them with the type of support that will allow them to be part of the Durham pre-K program, such as our quality improvement team, the technical assistance specialists that work with them, the coaches. And there's opportunity in Durham pre-K for a program site that spills over outside of their 4-year-old classroom, but it is a decision that each site makes based on their personal situation and needs. Some programs may choose to operate more independently and not align with our standards. So it's a mixed bag. But in terms of directly related to subsidy, I don't think that subsidy has been as big an impact and a barrier for people participating in Durham pre-K. And then there was a question about Beth was saying she couldn't see the chart. Are you able to see it now?
I'm not. I probably hit the wrong button. That's probably a me problem.
Hey,
Okay.
Linda, it's Christy. I just wanted to add to that subsidy comment. You're exactly right that there was a big influx of dollars. The reason, and that's not a DSS issue per se, like you said, it came really late. But the reason they did that is it was to, if you'll remember, the governor put out a priority budget and asked that the last 3 months or the last quarter that they raised the subsidy rates to the 2023 market rates. That's why that influx was put in there with the hope that the legislature would approve it. They didn't, but they approved it for the this new year. So that's why it really put all the counties are pretty much underspending, but that was the reason. So the intent was good, but it really put a burden on the the DSSs to pay those subsidies out. I just wanted people to understand why that came so late. It was supposed to be a positive thing, hoping that the legislature would have approved those higher subsidy rates in the last quarter, but they didn't.
Yeah, there's a long history of subsidy spending and we can certainly those of you who are interested, we can talk offline about spending in Durham. And this year was an anomaly where that happened, but there is a long history of underspend. But there are some strong reasons for that. The other question Ellen had put in the chat was about the teacher pay, and we're going to talk more about that in just a few minutes about teacher pay. With Durham pre-K, we are the only program that requires that teachers be paid on the Durham Public School scale. And the way that our payments are structured, there's a per child reimbursement rate that is meant to cover the basic service, But then we know that because of the substantial salaries that we require, we do also supplement with our teacher support payments. And so we're going to talk more about that in just a minute. Let's see, did I hit all the families? Let's see, all the questions. I think I did.
Linda, I've got one more subsidy question.
Yes,
And this is just, I can't remember. Can Durham pre-K families use subsidy to pay for before and after school care?
yes,
Okay, great.
they can. We don't have that many that are in the subsidy system doing before and after. Um, there are some though, and we also use Smart Start Scholarship Program dollars to pay for before and after care wrap in Durham pre-K, and we also use Durham pre-K dollars to support lower wealth families with wrap care.
Thanks.
So as with our Durham pre-K program where we braid dollars, we also work really hard to braid resources to have families be able to access before and after care.
I would also add about subsidy that right now, Durham County is operating without a waiting list, so families can apply directly and, potentially, if they qualify, be placed in care very quickly. It's not that they are getting on a waiting list and might be contacted in the future. So they are actively picking up families. As of right now, they are not holding a waiting list.
Yes, which is a positive and a negative. It's a positive, obviously, because it's opportunity for families. It's a negative because if you don't have a wait list, there's always going to be a delay in picking up, which means that there's gaps in service. You want to have some kind of wait list in order to quickly have families access the service, but it is a fine line. You don't want your wait list to be so long that families just give up and have no hope of being served. So it's a balancing act. Okay, we'll move on to our next one, and that'll probably answer if the future discussion doesn't answer your questions, Ellen, let us know.
So we are going to move on to talking about the teacher salary support payments. At the May meeting, you authorized us to adjust these payments to align with the raises in the teacher salary scale. At the time, that was the proposed state budget. Since then, that has been passed and signed by the governor. And so those are official now. And so as promised, we are reporting on those changes to you at this meeting. So if you'll go to the next slide. So first, I wanted to review the reasons why we felt a change in our support payments was needed. The approved state budget did include substantial teacher raises. The average increase when the Durham local supplement is included was 6%, but you can see that the actual increase varies greatly based on the number of years of experience. And the raises were highly concentrated with beginning teachers with 0 to 5 years of experience. And you can see how the raises change over time here. The concentration of raises at these lower experience levels meant we needed to restructure our teacher support payment rates so that they would still be fair and accomplish the goals that they were designed to accomplish, because this is just very different. Raises have typically tended to focus more on beginning teachers, but this was a much higher increase than we've seen in previous years, and it sort of just threw things a little out of kilter. So if you go to the next slide. Before we talk about the actual payment changes, I just want to remind you about the 2 different types of support payments that we have available. So the base payment was implemented this last school year for the first time. That is made for each lead teacher and instructional assistant at non-public school sites. And it's designed to help address the high base cost of Durham pre-K's higher salary requirement as compared to what lead teachers and instructional assistants are typically paid for non-Durham pre-K sites. The experience payment is paid for licensed lead teachers based on the number of years of experience on their license. As their years of experience increase, so does the experience payment. And the purpose of this payment, which has been in place since the beginning of Durham pre-K, has been so that sites can hire the most experienced teacher they can find without worrying about the cost of paying a more experienced teacher a higher rate. We never wanted sites to feel like they couldn't afford a very experienced teacher, because we want the most experienced teacher possible in the classroom. And so that's why it makes it so that hiring a more experienced teacher is not substantially more expensive than hiring a beginning year teacher. Also, just as a reminder, these are not payments paid directly to the teacher. These payments are made to the site. The sites pay the teachers their full salary directly, plus all of taxes, benefits, all those other things. That's taken care of by the site. Our support payments go to the site to offset what they are required to pay to the teaching staff. So I just want to be clear, none of these payments are going directly to the teacher. Okay, next slide. So for the base payment, we decided to increase the instructional assistant and licensed lead teacher base payment by 4%. So you can see last year's rates and this year's rates there. As we mentioned, the per child rate was also increased by 4%. So that is where that amount came from. For unlicensed lead teachers, you can see we did increase it by quite a bit more, and that was due to the minimum salary for an unlicensed lead teacher jumped from 41,000 per year to 48,000 per year. And that was just a very big change to expect providers to account for. It would have taken most of their increase that they would receive from the rate increase would have just turned and gone straight over to this teacher pay. And we just didn't feel like that was fair. So these teachers are not eligible for the experience payment. So this base payment is the only support that the sites get from us. And it still is not high enough that it incentivizes hiring an unlicensed teacher. Because we also definitely don't want to do that, where it's cheaper to hire an unlicensed teacher than a licensed teacher, and so sites want to go that route. So it still keeps it, they're paying more for an unlicensed teacher than they would a licensed teacher, but it just keeps it more on par with where it was before as far as being a percentage of their overall reimbursement. So that's the reason for that one is a little bit different. You go to the next slide, it talks about our experience payment. So our experience payment rates are set as a percent of the teacher's required monthly salary based on the number of years of experience on their license. The updated salary scale increased the starting rate for beginning teachers, so teachers with 0 years of experience. Previously, our experience payment was 10% of their monthly salary. We increased that to 16%. And then adjusted the subsequent levels accordingly as it made sense with how the state implemented their raises. So like when you look at the state salary scale, you can see like bigger, like some standard bump ups from one year to the next. And then like from 4 to 5, there's a bigger jump. From when you get to 10, there's a bigger jump. Some random ones. It's kind of I couldn't see a rhyme or reason to some of them, but basically we just followed how the state kind of made their scale increases and the percentages changed accordingly. And what this chart shows is you can see the big increase between the blue line, which was last year's teacher salary rates, and this year is the green. And you can see that much bigger difference at the beginning years of experience than later on, like we talked about. The lower lines are the salary amount that the provider is responsible for. And so again, you can see they are going to be responsible for more than last year, but it keeps the same curve basically of what they're responsible for. When we didn't make any adjustments to our plan, the curve was wildly, there was a lot of separation for the early years teachers, and then I think it actually dropped below last year's line for the high-end experienced teachers if we were to keep the same rate. So we just adjusted the percentages to try to make sure the experience payment was still accomplishing the goal that it has. And this is the percentages that we have decided on. If you go to the next slide, we do anticipate additional spending of around 71,000 to implement these support payment changes. But we do believe these changes are necessary to support providers in maintaining their participation in the Durham Pre-K program, and because these salaries are much higher than what typical pre-K teachers make outside of Durham Pre-K, and we want to continue to make this not a barrier for sites or for teachers. So any questions about the support payments?
Well, I do want to recognize Joy and her team for all the work they did in trying to do that tight math around those salary increases, because the state of North Carolina personnel rates for teachers is quite an interesting animal in terms of their where they make changes. So I am confident that this increase is not going to overly burden our sites. Okay, if there's not any questions, we'll move. Well, we can move to the next topic, but before we do that, Kathy, since we do have a quorum, do you want to go back and vote on the minutes?
Sure. Yeah. Let's jump back to slide, what, 3 or 4?
Yeah, so you received the minutes, and I know that Dr. Pittman had an observation about the minutes she wanted to share, and if anybody else also had questions or adjustments, we want to be sure we cover those.
Great. So Dr. Pittman, did you have some feedback about the notes?
Just on page 2, there's a minor typo, spelling of the word witted, enrollment discussion. That's all. Thank you.
We'll
Got
make
it.
that, yeah, we'll definitely make that adjustment. Thanks for catching that.
Okay. So after you've had a minute to review these meeting notes from our May meeting, we'll be looking for a motion to approve.
Motion to approve with the suggested change.
Thanks, Ellen. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thanks. Christina, was that you?
Yes.
Great, thanks. All right, any additional comments or anything? All right. Hearing none, all in favor of approving the May 2026 meeting notes, please raise your hand. However, you can raise your hand. All right, I know folks are counting, so keep your hands up until we hear other. Yeah.
Okay, I think we have it. Can we just ask for clarification? Is anybody opposed so that we can make sure we note that?
Yeah. All right. So lower your hands if you have raised them to approve. Okay. All right. So if anyone does not approve of the May meeting notes, please raise your hand now.
We're good.
All right. Don't see any hands. Great. So it's unanimous. We have approved the May 2026 meeting notes. Thanks, you all. Okay. So now we're going to jump back.
We're going to slide 19, Tamara.
And talk about the IA compensation for 26-27.
Yes. And this is a voting item also, if you choose to do so. Next slide. So, as you'll remember, governance has a history of setting a minimum hourly rate for instructional assistants based on the living wage in Durham County. That was so we, in the past, you voted in March of 2025 to set the minimum hourly rate at 1958 based on the city of Durham's living wage. And in that at that time period, we envisioned and you voted to use that city of Durham living wage as a future benchmark for the minimum IA payments. And the reason that you voted to make that the case was that those were posted regularly on the City of Durham website. Sometimes the County of Durham rates were not available at all times, and there was discrepancy between the two. And at that time, you did vote to do that. That City of Durham living wage as a benchmark was what we used to set that previous wage. This year, in an earlier meeting back in the spring, we talked about the fact that this year there was a tremendous increase in the living wage rate as posted at the City of Durham website. And the County of Durham was very different. And we were really in a tight space trying to figure out what could we realistically do. Of course, we want to support our instructional assistants. And the reality is that our 1958 minimum was already lower than our average hourly rate amongst our instructional assistants. During the 25-26 school year, that average hourly rate was 2042. The median was 1979 actual people employed, in their as instructional assistants in Durham PreK. Next slide. So just for context, though, the current City of Durham living wage is $21.90. The current Durham County minimum wage is $19.22, and the current Durham Public Schools minimum wage is $17.15. However, in their new budget, they are moving their minimum wage in the public schools to a higher rate, but it's not at the 21.90 rate of the City of Durham. So at this point, our 1958 rate is what we have in the 25-26 school year was contractually obligated that all our sites pay that as a minimum rate. And of course, they all met it, and we already talked about what those numbers look like. When we had our previous discussion, we really talked about what should be best and what to do, and you asked us to come back to you once we had the full budget. Next slide. So further context, right now, based on our 25-26 employment of instructional assistants, 83% of our employed IAs made less than the City of Durham living wage. So that just contextually, the way it works is we just set a minimum. The sites can pay whatever rate works for them in their budget and works for their facilities. We don't ask for the same pay rate across all sites. We just set the minimum. I think that for us, for when we look at the overall, we know that our teachers, our instructional assistants are making more than that minimum, but currently, having a jump to the City of Durham living wage would be a large jump for most providers, given that only 17% of our currently employed IAs make more than that 21.90 amount. So I think where we are at this point is asking you to consider options. If you'll move to the next slide. when we met with the sites yesterday, we told them that that the current rate was the 1958 and that we would be getting back with them about any change if there was one. And we did make them aware that it was under consideration for the 26-27 school year. So basically, we've summarized what we see as the options here, but obviously you may have other ideas. But we wanted to open it up for your discussion at this point, now that we have a budget and now that you see where we are in terms of, we don't believe that we could further increase our base payment support this year. We don't really have the money. And so if one option you wanted us to consider was to pay sites more, that would not be, we would not be able to implement that right away. We would have to look at that for next school year.
And do we know what DPS is, what it's looking like their instructional rate's going to be?
Our budget goes before the board next week, the proposed salary scales. It's looking around 18.22 an hour.
Okay, that's helpful. And I think it's also helpful to remember that instructional assistants at Durham Public Schools get the full state health benefit packages, right? Yeah.
Yeah, they have substantially healthier benefit packages that do enhance their compensation.
Mhm. Okay, you all. So we have some options. Would love to hear your thoughts on this. Linda, did the directors provide any feedback on this information yesterday?
No, I think they were the ones who provided some feedback were really focused on the substantial teacher raises, certified teacher raises. And I think that this issue was really lost in the consideration of those large raises that the state is implementing for lead teachers.
Did we provide any signal as to where we were going to go? Were they expecting raises, or they were kind of just like in a holding pattern in terms of our messaging?
No, basically we said that we just basically said it would be 1958 for this at this point.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, we were very careful not to signal anything.
Yeah. I'll speak and say that I struggle to even consider an option where we're going down 30 cents an hour. It just feels like an insignificant amount to drop, while also saying that we reduced our fees or our payment. So that feels like a non-starter for me, because I'm not sure how it really helpfully moves our needle that much anyway. And I also, having paid very close attention to DPS teachers and what's going on with the Durham Association of Educators and our pay scales, I get like concerned about increasing too much also. So I guess like right now I'm sitting with continuing with the current wage. I'll just share that.
Yeah, Ellen.
I concur. I'm very concerned that we have to get that fine balance of paying, as good wage as we can, but also supporting as many seats as we can. And we're in a really tough situation. As I said at one of our last meetings, there's now the huge threat that we could be or when I say we, that county government, which funds this program, could be constrained by a proposed vote on a constitutional amendment this fall. We don't know what the limits are. All it does is allow the General Assembly to set limits on property tax rates. And if that happens, we, all of a sudden, local revenues on a diet. So I really feel that in this very uncertain environment, we need to do as much as we can on these things, but we also need to keep our eye on this impending possible real crisis in terms of where revenue comes from to support and local initiatives.
Yeah. Thanks, Ellen. Very helpful. Beth, I see your hand is raised.
Yes, I agree with Ellen as well. I think that, the risk is always when we face budget cuts, so often the tendency is to water down what we've done in the past, to water down our values, to water down, the decisions that we've made with very clear reasons behind them. And I want us to, I personally would urge us to resist the urge to water down the wages that we know are so important. North Carolina across the state is facing a child care workforce crisis because people aren't paid living wages. And so I think, continuing to hold the line on what we've historically done feels really important to me. And I think to Ellen's point about the property tax amendment, I think it's really important that we tell the story of what local property taxes fund, that they make meaningful investments. And I think otherwise the messaging could very easily be, oh, well, I get lower taxes without people recognizing what that trade-off is. So I'm very supportive of holding the line here.
Thanks, Beth.
Is holding the line just keeping the current minimum or going up? Just sorry.
To me, it's continuing our alignment with the city of Durham would be
Okay.
what I think holding the line is. So we continue what we've done historically.
So, so to get clarification, then you're proposing that we make an increase from 1958 to 2190?
That would be what I support, and I think that's and that may be not what you were suggesting, Ellen, because I do have concerns about raising increased costs at a time where things are uncertain in terms of the future revenue. But I also think the fact of the matter is that those living wage increases have gone up because costs that people are experiencing have gone up. And I think in order to hold steady with what people are actually bringing home and what that buys them, that does mean keeping pace with the city of Durham living wage piece for me. That's how I interpret it.
I guess where I'm coming from is that it's the county that funds the program, and the county's living wage is more consistent with where we'd be without, not going to the city. And the school district's living wage is even lower. And so you're going to have people in the same buildings being paid differently. I don't know. To me, it doesn't make sense at this point in time to be doing that.
And just to jump in with Ellen, because I also agree with how Ellen just articulated that. And Beth, I want to be clear. I want to pay these people as much as humanly possible. They do way more important things than I do in my personal life. But one of the big things that have been conflated in all of the DAE pushing for additional wages, et cetera, is people don't understand the difference between the city and the county. We just don't understand that kind of thing in this community, and I get it. But it is the county who's funding this, and I think that's important to kind of track ourselves there to a certain degree. The city is a much smaller entity, frankly, and they're able to be a little bit more nimble. But on the county level, that's where we're tracking. And also, I do really actually worry about what happens if we go so much higher than within the Durham Public Schools salary. There's a huge institution that we're funneling children into, and I worry about losing staff there in some cases, and that would make me uncomfortable creating a situation where we're poaching as opposed to supporting a broader institution. And I know I hate saying that because I want to pay these people as much as possible.
Well, it sounds like we've got consensus. No one wants to lower. Just the discussion we're hearing. Lowering does not feel comfortable. And I agree with that 100%. I'm not comfortable raising it to the city's minimum for all of the things that have been shared. Yeah, it feels like we are sort of, it feels like we're considering the top 3 bullet points, that all those have been raised. And I don't know that we have,
I wanted to,
yeah.
sorry, I just wanted to point out for those of you who are not following the chat that Ileana Vink pointed out in the chat, just that everyone should also keep in mind that the county employees do get a very robust benefits package that does enhance their compensation. So we would want to just always bear in mind that these hourly rates are still discrepant, even if we bring our rates to them, because our private site staff do not have robust benefit packages.
I can't figure out how to raise my hand.
You did a real good job there, Debbie.
Go ahead, Debbie.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for all this diverse thought. It's very helpful. I would like to dovetail off Miss Reckow's, Ellen Reckow's comment about the impact on the seats so my question is, have we been able to cost out the 2 proposals and the ultimate impact on the number of seats or the funding seats that will be result in that increase? Or have we, so let me just leave it there. That's my question.
Okay, so just for clarity, the impact of this change right now, we've already cut seats for the current year, which means that we've been enrolling children. So it's not really an option for us to further cut seats at this juncture. In terms of this amount of money, what will happen is if you increase the minimum rate, Tamara, can you go backwards to slide, let me tell you which one it is, sorry. Slide 17, if you keep going back, it's the one that says experience payment changes and all that. That one, thank you. Now this is a slide that talks about totally different payments, but it just gives you a visual of, so we reimburse sites on a per child amount. And we expect that with that per child amount, the site is using those dollars to provide the service, inclusive of the salaries of the people delivering the service. We provide extra support payments to help defray the impact of the higher salaries we demand for lead teachers, as well as for IAs. This chart is really just talking about those lead teachers. But now Tamara, if you now go forward to the this one, stop there, thanks. So this chart does talk about the IA wages, and what it really shows you is, presently 17% of our IAs already make above that proposed minimum. So basically what will happen if you raise the wages for the IAs at this point beyond the current 1958 for a site, the impact will be that a greater portion of their reimbursement per child will go towards salary. So the reality is that we will not have any additional money in our overall budget to adjust the base support payment more. We've, for this year, it's the base payment that helps a site pay for their IAs. And we have made adjustments, in our payment support system already. And we wouldn't be able to make further adjustments because we're going to be closely monitoring the budget. Now, what we could do for you, if you did want to raise that minimum rate, as we get deeper into the school year, we can, we always report back to you about where we are and all that. If we did have a situation where there was lower, more vacancies than we were projecting for or something like that, if we had some funds, we could come back to you to say, there are some extra dollars we would want to put back at the sites, but that's not a goal. We want to fully subscribe our seats. We want to serve the children that we have. We've already made, cuts in those seats. So I just want to be clear that if you adjust the rate for the IAs, the impact will be at the site. We won't be able to give more money.
Thank you.
Thanks, Al.
So there are different, the numbers of seats that you've made your cut, we've made our cuts, and the seats are locked. And now we're talking about the bucket of money that this raise would come from. What I think I heard you say was the extra support payment. So it's a wash as far as the master budget or the major.
Mhm. So the extra support payment comes out of that overall budget. And we've already made adjustments to the extra support payments. We wouldn't have the resources to further change those support payments. So where the money would come from, if we change our minimum of what we require an IA to be paid, it would be the individual site's budget that they set with the money we give them to provide the service. A greater portion of their spending, I mean, the majority of the money we give them pays staff. Everywhere in the world, your biggest expense is always personnel. And it would end up being a larger portion of their budget. And again, for 17% of the sites, some of them are already paying a higher amount. And they probably most likely would not adjust the pay of their, I mean, can't speak for them. Maybe they adjust their pay every year, but they've made it work to pay more already. But the rest, 39% make our current minimum and 44% make between the current and the proposed minimum. So,
Yep. Ellen, I see your hand. Go for it.
Okay. That really, for me, it seems like it would be almost
Later.
irresponsible for us to
Not yet, I'm doing it. Oh.
raise the wage, because we're actually then creating a burden for the providers to somehow infill. And for instance, the school district, that makes the pre-K that's not funded by the county that they've been providing, it creates this situation where they have to pay more to support our, the Durham pre-K classrooms than the other pre-K that they've had historically. I think we've got to stay the course with a more moderate situation, either with the current rate raise or going up just the 3%. That's otherwise, I think we're getting ourselves into some hot water.
Thanks, Ellen.
Jean has her hand up.
Yep.
Yeah, I want to make sure I'm understanding how all this affects the sites, because they're already paying more now for their lead teachers, yes, because they have to. So I'm wondering how it's going to look if we don't raise the structural support, the IA pay as well. I mean, maybe they won't look at it that way, I don't know, but if we're already having to pay our lead teachers more, how are these instructional assistants going to feel when we're telling them that they're staying at the same rate? Or am I not seeing this the right way? I don't know.
I mean, that is true that the state increased the rate for teachers and in the public schools, The whole classified pay scale is an entirely different thing, and we don't tie to that classified pay scale. But for instructional assistants, the minimum we've set has always been more robust than what typically is paid to a classroom assistant in childcare.
Mm.
So we would be in a situation where a raise was mandated for the lead teacher, but there would be no raise mandated for the instructional assistant.
Right. And I think just to say it again, it's going to be up to the local sites to determine whether or not the IAs receive the raise. What we're saying is what are we mandating that it has to be, knowing though as our minimum, correct, right? But that sites have the option to go above that minimum. And this chart showing us that we have a healthy percentage of them that are already doing that. I think my conflict is that the base reimbursement rate is already set. We're really close to the start of the year. I think making a huge increase is going to be a challenge. Can we go to the next slide so we can look at our options again? I don't know that we've got consensus among our conversation. This has been a very, very healthy conversation. So knowing that if we maintain the current wage minimum, sites still have the option to provide raises for IAs at their sites. We do know that lead teachers are getting a raise. We do know that state employees are getting a 3% raise. So that is also out in the air. But we need to decide what is our plan, what will be our recommendation or our motion rather, going forward. So does anybody feel like they're wanting to make a motion at this point?
I'll make a motion
Okay, go for it.
to maintain the current minimum wage.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, so we have a first and a second to maintain the current wage minimum. Any remaining conversation or questions?
Question.
Yeah.
Do any of us need to,
Recuse?
yes, thank you.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, so Dr. Pittman will need to recuse as well as Brenda Carter. And I believe that is all our voting members that would need to recuse.
Okay. So for this one, we will need a show of hands again. So all in favor of the motion that has been made, please indicate by raising your hand. Your virtual hand or your real hand.
Okay. Based on what I'm able to view, I have 2 yeses. Did I miss anyone?
Yeah, I think so.
Did
Because
I?
I'm seeing one.
Oh, wait, I
Okay.
see 2 more. Yep.
Yeah.
So we have 4 yeses for keeping it the same.
Okay.
I thought I saw 5. Did Mr. Rutherford have his hand up?
I did
Okay,
not
let's
see. He
just
did.
to
Okay, so we do have 5. I did not see your hand, Jason. Sorry. So we have 5 yeses.
okay. So everybody put your hands down.
How?
Okay, I think all the hands are down. Okay, if you are not in favor of the motion that has been presented, now raise your hand.
Okay, I only have 2 not in favor, and I don't have, so we have some folks, we have several people who didn't vote or were not able to see their vote. So yeses,
You want to put them in the chat?
yeah, I think we may need to, because I think some folks, If you are choosing not to vote, that's fine. You can just say abstain.
Okay, so in the chat, put yes if you're approving, no if you're not approving, and then abstain if you're abstaining.
What is the impact of an abstention? Is that a yes?
In our minutes, it's just not a vote at all.
Non-vote at all.
Mhm. Okay. So with our current better methodology, we have 7 yeses and we still have 2 nos.
Okay, so the motion has passed. And so going forward, the motion is and has been approved to maintain the current wage minimum of 1958. Thank you all. This is a very hard decision, a very hard discussion. And I think let's just remember it's up to the sites. And this is not saying that they have to keep it at the 1958. So thank you all for this very good discussion and
Yeah.
decision.
And we
Yeah.
always report back to you.
Mhm.
So typically in around November, we do report to you around the we report to you around the compensation package and the experience of our staff and all of that. And so you will, at that time, you'll be able to see, because we monitor the wages at it for every site, and we will be able to report back to you where the team members are being, what the compensation rates are. So, and we'll monitor this closely as this gets implemented across our community from different entities.
Thanks, everybody. Okay, well, now we get to go hear some program updates, I believe is next on our agenda.
Yep, I'm going to turn it to Tamara.
Okay, good. It's still morning. Yeah, good morning, everyone. For 2026-27, as of July 10th, we have 1,325 applications in our online portal since it opened in March. And then last year, we have received 1,326 applications during around the same time period.
Yeah,
And the application opened
interesting.
on March the 2nd this year. So, which is a little later than we did in the previous time, but we're still kind of where we were this time last year, even with the late start.
Yeah, and we definitely have a lot of families who wait, and so it's going to be interesting. We'll be tracking between now and the start of school, and obviously at our September meeting, we will be reporting more extensively to you with program updates as well as with enrollment updates. So.
Great, thank you. All right, so this is our final slide, and as promised, we're going to get out of here way early. So our meeting schedule, just remember we meet on the third Thursday of every other month from July to May, and July is if we need it. Our first meeting of the next school year will be in person at the Jim and Carolyn Hunt Early Childhood Resource Center. So that's going to be Thursday, September the 17th from 9:30 until noon, and lunch will be provided. Beth, I see you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I have a question. I've been seeing and hearing a lot of anxiety in the community from folks because of the rolling notifications. And people talking about, well, you've heard, I haven't heard, all of my son's friends have heard, or all of my, and so I just, and some people asking why we don't do a notification all at once in the same way that Durham Public Schools does with the lottery. And I just would love any feedback about how to answer some of those questions that have come up, and if we have ever talked about, I guess I'm just the benefits of the rolling notifications, and then some of the maybe challenges that come up for families experience anxiety related to it. And I feel like I just didn't have enough information to address some of those things people were raising.
Right. Placement is certainly a very complex issue. Tamara, I see you had your hand raised. Did you want to address that?
I did, but I did want to also default to our partnership who also handles placement, but I will address it. Um, it's complicated because with Durham Public Schools places, they're not looking at all the variations of income, eligibility, all that stuff that we have to do to determine a seat. Durham Public Schools is just placing in the classroom. When a parent applies with us, we got to look at number one, which 4 types of seats do you qualify for in this one application? Is it Title One? Is it is it Head Start? What's your income? All this kind of stuff. Are you homeless? Is it Durham Partnership for Children? Then Durham Pre-K takes the least amount. When we go in and look in the application, sometimes parents don't always apply when they say they did. So they may have submitted the application last week. Some parents applied in March. Some parents haven't completely filled out all of the pieces of the applications. Some parents haven't even responded to the 5 emails that have been sent to them. So there's a lot of variations with the applications. And then some parents are requesting transfers. A lot of parents are getting responses, but they have like multifaceted questions, like they have twins and one is here and one wants to go here. A lot of things slow up the application, but a lot of it is slowing up if the parent wants multiple or has multiple concerns, and it is a kind of like a we have to really kind of look at all the layers of even answering one parent's question. So that takes time, as well as parents wanted different locations once they do get their choice. And so we still have to look at, it's not like, oh, okay, you don't want to go here, we'll just put you over here. That's not how it works. We have to look at, do you even qualify for the seat over there? Do they even have any space? And so a lot of it is a lot of layers for families when they do apply. And then we don't have like an enormous army of people doing all this placement. It is a small scale team. And then all of that is kind of contingent upon other factors as well. That's just my short answer.
Yeah, and what I suggest is that in terms of as a governance member, if you're approached, encourage families to call the helpline for sure. Joy, can you do me a favor and put the helpline phone number in the chat? Um, the because the helpline really is the best place for families to express their concern, because the helpline folks will get their question to the right place so that they can be supported. And then also, I think it is such a complex issue. I think would be a good idea if we will work with our partners at Durham's Partnership for Children. The partnership takes the lead on placement. And what we can do also is work with them to just do a quick and short fact sheet for you as a resource to you as you get approached in the community. It would probably be helpful to have some of the things Tamara mentioned, so that you would have that at your fingertips. It is hard. I had someone in my neighborhood who approached me when I was walking, getting some exercise, and was very concerned about her situation. And it is hard when if you don't feel like you have the full information and where to go and that type of thing. But the pre-K hotline is an important place to send them, and they'll be able to, and it's in the chat now, they'll be able to um, get to the right place to ask their questions and understand their particular unique situation. I saw that Jamaica, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Linda. I also wanted to lift up that another thing that can be said to parents out in the community that are asking about it is to encourage them to advocate for funding for pre-K expansion and access to expanded access to pre-K, because another really big thing that comes up is we end up running out of the seats and the seat types that the bulk of our families who are applying for these programs can be in. So, like for example, right now we're able to Durham PreK is able to fund, I think, 14 seats at Lions Farm. But if we had further funding, we would be able to potentially fund for more seats at Lions Farm, which would then get more families into those seats in a faster manner. And so that is usually what I also encourage families after explaining like kind of how the process works is, hey, advocate to funders for further to consider further funding for these pre-K programs and things like that to kind of help mitigate that rolling wait for placement.
Yeah, it is one advocacy piece to be aware of, for example, is that in NC Pre-K, the state investment in NC Pre-K, the eligibility guidelines, the income eligibility guidelines for NC Pre-K are arguably quite insufficient to align with families' incomes. You know, that there we have seats that go unfilled because families don't meet that eligibility requirement is one reason. And the state has really not kept up with inflation. And the fact of the matter is that many families who are over income for those seats are not able to pay their monthly bills. So it's just something to keep in mind. Okay, but we will provide you with more resources to help you with those questions.
That's all really helpful. I had kind of said, it's a rolling application process, and therefore it's a rolling notification process. But as opposed to Durham Public Schools, where there is a strict cutoff for the lottery, and then there's a single deadline where we get back to people. But I also do understand parents' anxiety when when they haven't heard and other people have heard, and so having those resources would be helpful. And Tosh, I do see you engaging in those spaces all the time, and very much appreciate the engagement you all give. So thank you all.
Can I just make one more suggestion on that? Because right now we're talking hand-to-hand combat, and I think we need something maybe one level above that, because that's a lot to put on each of you to have those individual conversations. We should keep doing that, but I also think like a regular cadence of, we know you're waiting, the process is still moving, just in a proactive way. It's like when you're stuck on an airplane, you're like, are we ever getting off? And the pilot never says anything, and then you're on a different one, and finally actually they start giving you information, and at least you might not be getting there any faster, but at least you know they haven't forgotten about you. I think we probably want to allay parents' fears that like they got lost in the system.
Yeah. Yeah, we do have automated notifications that go out, but I think that we can always look and review how often we're communicating with folks
Even
and
pushing
what we
that out on Facebook though and Instagram also, so that like even if I'm not a parent who's engaged in this, I might see that information and then tell my friend, oh yeah, like I heard that they're blah blah blah.
yeah. Yeah, I think we can always definitely look at our communication and what we can do to alleviate anxiety is always going to help the program in the long run. Thanks.
Marilyn, your hand was up, I think.
No, Linda did address it, but I just did want to say that yes, parents get communications through emails monthly with updates regarding placements, what's going on, what they're currently waiting for, and reminders for everything that entails in our system. And just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, and we can definitely look at the schedule of that. And I think you've got a good point, Christina, around social media, because we do tend to, in our social media, just hype up the program's existence. And we could probably look at how we are using that tool to also get that message out about the placement process and where things are with that. So we'll work with our partners to look at options for that.
I think it's a great idea. I know so many people don't check email very often, but they're on social media constantly. So that messaging is more immediately received. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, wonderful conversation. So any other final announcements? Anything else good for the order? All right, seeing none. So thank you all for a wonderful meeting. We got a lot accomplished in a short amount of time. To properly adjourn, I will need a motion to adjourn. Anyone so moved to make that motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Wonderful. Thank you, Christina. Do we have a second?
I'll second. This is Alex Hollid.
Thanks, Alex. Wonderful. Okay, if you are all in favor of adjourning, feel free to adjourn. And if you're not, just stick around. Otherwise, hope you have a great rest of your summer, and we will see you September 17th, 9:30 a.m. At the Briggs location. Thanks, you all.